With that, welcome you inside this edition of Big Ten Today. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo, soon to be joined by both Rafael Davis and Trent Meacham as we look back on Wednesday night in Big Ten men's hoops, look ahead to both Thursday and Friday, including Indiana at Purdue under the Friday night lights. Plus, I'll have a critical discussion with the NABC Executive Director Craig Robinson, reflecting on his organization's partnership with the American Cancer Society during Suits and Sneakers Week. But we begin with the big story. After 32 years coaching women's volleyball at a championship level, the last 25 in Lincoln, now former Husker headman John Cook has called it quits. Cook announcing his retirement Wednesday, followed by an official Thursday press conference during which the emotions flowed as the Nebraska icon reflected on his career and the reasons behind his decision.
I got to start off by first, I've been thinking about sharing this with you because I always have to have something for Tom Chattel. And Neil Young, I think, is one of the greatest musicians ever. And there's a song that I've listened to for 30 years from him. And he talks about it's better to burn out than fade out. Like I said, I haven't been through this before. But I've always approached that I was going to go as hard as I could. And when the day came and I felt like I've done enough, and that's what happened last week. And my daughter's having another baby. That's also part of it. And I've missed a lot with my kids. Sorry. But I want to be there for those grandkids. Also, Coach Pettit left this program in a great spot for me, and I feel like Nebraska volleyball is in the best spot it's ever been since I've been here with our team. And I'm talking about our team's going to be a great team. They have a chance to be a great team, but this team. Just to give you an example, I met with him yesterday. Troy talked to him, did an amazing job. Of course, there's emotion. Sports, it's what you want. The first thing they did, they go, we need 5 minutes. They went and met, and they started talking about how they're going to support Danny. To me, that validated it all. So I feel really good about putting Danny in a position to keep this program going.
Thrilled to be joined now by volleyball analyst Emily Ehman. Emily, it's almost impossible to do what I'm going to ask you to do right now, and that is to put into perspective what John Cook means, not just to Nebraska, not just to Wisconsin, where he was at before he made the trip to Lincoln, but what he has meant to this sport as a whole.
John Cook has meant the world to the sport of volleyball in so many different ways. He has set the bar for what's possible in volleyball and continues to push the boundaries and push the ceiling of what's capable and able in this sport. You know, John Cook not only packed 92,003 people into Memorial Stadium in 2023 to watch Nebraska volleyball in the football stadium, he's left a legacy of sustained success with that program. 4 NCAA titles, 12 Final Fours, 14 conference titles. I mean, the list of accomplishments goes on and on, but he's leaving a legacy of, sustained success and culture that I think, had somewhat been created before him, but he helped cultivate that into incredible athletes, incredible leaders, and just leaving the sport as a whole, not just at Nebraska, but really worldwide, better than he found it.
Emily, I was shocked, to be quite honest. I know I've been drowning in football and basketball over the last month, so not as dialed into volleyball as I was, say, 6 months ago when I sat here during volleyball media days and talked with John Cook, and there was no hint, no inkling at that point that this past year could be his final year. Were you as surprised as the rest of us? Was the volleyball world as surprised as I was?
Yeah, I think everyone was surprised. I mean, I was on a plane. I don't think I would have taken that flight if I had known to, schedule a few things out. And calling, local Nebraska media, no one had a clue. That was something that John Cook actually talked about in his presser, that he felt really proud of, the fact that they kind of kept it top secret and were able to also keep that transition a secret too, naming Danny Buzzboom Kelly the coach right after they announced his retirement. I think we were all shocked. Now, the timing as a whole, when you take a step back, somewhat makes sense. So for John Cook, he's been hinting at retiring for the past few seasons. All of us in the volleyball community expected it to be within probably the next few years, but he did just sign a contract extension. So that, raised question marks of the timing of it. It also was just a random Wednesday at the end of January. Normally these announcements come pretty close to the end of the season. But he said he just felt like it was time. His daughter is having her second baby. He wants to be there for the grandkids. And with this new transition coming in with Danny Buzzboom Kelly, it made sense with where she was at. And that was a really big reason why John Cook wanted to do it now, because he knew that the transition would be as best as possible. And as he put it, Nebraska's program right now is as good as he's ever seen it. And he wanted to give someone the program that was inheriting it as good as when he got it in 2000.
He did reference Terry Pettit and that handoff, and now his handoff to Danny Buzzboom Kelly, who led Louisville to the national championship game last year. We heard John talk about the fact that Louisville had a shot without its best player against Penn State. And now you start to think about the succession plan that Penn State had, from Russ Rose to Katie Schumacher-Cauley, and that ends with a national title last year. And so it seems to make a lot of sense that a former Husker is back, and exactly the player, the former assistant, and the person, that I think John Cook wanted to succeed him in Lincoln.
Yeah, I mean, there were no question marks who was going to get this job, at least to us, had known about it for a while. Or, she actually had a clause in her contract that if she took the Nebraska job, there was no buyout. That was written into her Louisville contract. So there were signs, especially with how close Coach Cook and Danny Buzzboom Kelly are. We know that she's from Nebraska. She played at Nebraska, was an assistant there, won a title as a player and an assistant. So this is a player that's not just familiar with the program as a whole, but also being from Nebraska. It's ingrained in her. She knows what volleyball means to not just a program, but the entire state as a whole. And I also think when you take a step back and say you cancel out all that Nebraska stuff, she's an incredible coach as it is. What she has done to big seasons, she took a team that was 12-18 the year before she came in to a 24-7 team in just that year. And now she's made 2 national championship appearances in the last 3 seasons. She's won 4 ACC titles. She was a 2021 AVCA Coach of the Year. The list goes on and on. So all the Nebraska ties aside, she would have been a perfect person regardless. So when you add in the fact that she's from Nebraska, won a title as a player, won a title as an assistant, it just culminates into the perfect person for this job.
Let's finish here, Em, as we look ahead to next year with no John Cook. That's not the only change. We saw Matt Ulmer, as John Cook referenced, going to Kansas. Big salary raise for the former head coach of the Ducks, who did great work at Oregon. It'll be year 2 with the expanded Big Ten. So how different does 2025 appear as we look deep into the horizon?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I mean, going into the season, you have so many programs with so many high expectations. And from what we've heard from at least the Nebraska players right now, most of them seem like they're going to be sticking around. Obviously, the portal opens for them, and we'll see if there's any shuffling. But it seems like these players are locked in. The assistant coach, Jalen Reyes and Kelly Hunter, are already locked in as well for the program. So I would expect this Nebraska program to continue to push the boundaries and continue to get better and better. But as we say every year, the Big Ten title is going to be completely wide open. And I'm already excited for the season, and it's like 8 months away.
You got to pause just a little bit. We got to get through the Big Ten basketball tournaments, through spring football. I know it'll be here as quickly, not quite as quickly as you want it, but perhaps before we expect. Emily Ehman, great stuff as always. Truly appreciate the perspective on John Cook. Should be a fascinating storyline as we follow Nebraska volleyball as closely as we always have. Emily, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, still the cut. Every time Maryland wins, it makes Rayfel Davis look smarter and smarter, beating number 17 Wisconsin. Second-ranked win in the last 3 games. Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, really good once again. I mean, Wisconsin had won 8 out of 9. Terps have now won 4 in a row. And when you go ahead and look at the current Big Ten standings, It's Maryland now above that line. They would get the double bye. Raphael Davis, aforementioned, is with me. Trent Meacham joining via Zoom as well. We'll get Raphael's thoughts in just a second here. But, Trent, I want to start with you. These Terps, last couple of games, in the backcourt especially, I know Julian Reese, Derek Queen, they were good. They combined for 26 and a bunch of rebounds to beat Wisconsin in that game. But Rice, Gillespie, what Kevin Willard's backcourt has done the last couple of weeks, to me, makes this Maryland team completely different.
Well, you got three guys in the backcourt playing with great confidence, can all rise up and make shots. The three of them combined to hit 10 threes last night. They're all shooting it well on the season. So they have a lot of firepower in that backcourt. When you first think of Maryland, it's the front court, but that backcourt can really go. I will say, though, I've been really impressed with them defensively. They're so quick at all five positions on the court. The guards will get after you. Queen and Reese can both move their feet. Queen's improving as a defender, as a young freshman. And Raphael, I know Raphael loves the defense. That was my first reaction last night. Man, these guys defended, especially that first half, when they didn't have it going offensively, the defense did not let up. That was a 40-minute effort on the defensive end. And if they can bring that every night, now they have the offense to carry the weight on that end of the floor as well.
No, exactly. You look at the second half, they held Wisconsin to 37% from the field, and they had two separate kill shots. And what I mean by that is 3 stops in a row. At the end of every college basketball practice, in order to get to the locker room, get home, get to dinner, it's one drill that you do. You do your shell drill. Which team can get 3 stops in a row? And there were 2 separate times in that second half where Maryland dug in and they achieved it. And it allowed them to get on the break. It allowed them to start their offense. Their transition game was big time. But I agree with you, Rick. The guard play is the difference, because in college basketball, guards make you go, and Maryland's trio of guards are big time. Jacoby Gillespie, computer point guard. He can knock down a shot, but he can use the ball screen, he can get in the lane, he can make plays. Selton Miguel is a dead-eye shooter, catch-and-shoot guy, can come off of screens, can knock it down. Rodney Rice is a bucket, can drive it, can get out in transition, can finish at the rim. So I love that they all do something different, because if one is lacking, someone else can pick them up. This Maryland team is dangerous because they beat you multiple ways. They make 12 threes one game, they beat you up inside the next, they get in transition the next and score with their defense. They are cooking in College Park. I love what Coach Willard did.
I was buying in on Wisconsin, Raphael, recently, but if you get 23 from John Tonje, you need the other guys to also be able to step up. I mean, against USC a couple of weeks ago, right, he went scoreless in that game, and they found a way to win. But when he goes for 23, 25, as he was doing regularly early in the year, Steven Crowell had a decent game last night, but you need guys like Max Klesmit to shoot well. And I also think they need John Blackwell to be really good. Not every now and then, not most of the time. If Wisconsin wants to make a run, they need Blackwell to be good every single night.
Yeah, for sure. And he can't get in foul trouble early on in ball games. The 2 fouls that John Blackwell picked up in the first half, inexcusable. Just didn't need him. 50 feet away from the basket, he's got to be on the floor and be a factor. Max Klesmit, he has to be better. A leader, a veteran. He's been in this program. 5 points, 1 of 8 from the field. That's not good enough. And when Tonje went down with that second foul in the first half, John Blackwell already had 2. That is Steven Crowell's moment. There was times in that first half Steven Crowell should have scored the ball, and he did too much with his passing.
Yeah. You can see Greg Gard sometimes looking at Steven Crowell. Just shoot, man.
Yes.
You've been around forever. Exactly. You have to shoot the basketball. Trent, I'm interested on your take with this Badger team that for a long time looked like it could be in the conversation to be the best team in the Big Ten. Now, after that nice little run, they've dropped a couple recently. Any major concerns for you with the Badgers?
I don't have big concerns. I just say for them offensively, when they play a little bit quicker, not necessarily shooting the ball quicker, but when that ball moves, I really like them on that end of the floor. Sometimes they get back to their old ways where it's more stagnant, more iso ball. So when the ball moves, when it pops, when it sees multiple sides of the floor, they're fantastic. And then I would say the one guy, Nolan Winter, I don't think he realizes how good he is at this point. I think they could utilize him more. When he's more aggressive, that opens things up for his teammates as well.
Big win for Maryland on Wednesday night. Maryland above that first line, which means they would get the double bye. You could argue it was an equally big win for Rutgers on Wednesday night, because Rutgers is trying to make sure it gets in to the Big Ten tournament. And how about the performance of Ace Bailey? 37 points. He was efficient, too.
Yes.
13 of 20 from the field. He was 5 of 8 from 3. Trent, he even throws in 6 rebounds to go alongside and a couple of dimes. We saw exactly why on Wednesday night this guy is projected as, if not top 2, certainly top 3 in the NBA draft.
And 3 blocks on the defensive end. I mean, he was locked in from the get-go. Raphael proclaimed him his guy, one of his dogs, D-A-W-G, dogs last night.
Good spelling.
I'm not mad about it, Raphael. Maybe the most impressive shot making I've seen in a number of seasons, especially that first half. He went for 24 points. And look, they didn't do much for him. Just clear out the side. Northwestern, they have heavy help side. So they have 10 eyes looking at him, and it did not matter. When you have his skill at 6'10", his athleticism, and I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Bruce Weber compared him to Glenn Robinson. I liken him to Tracy McGrady. So talented, and it was fun to just watch him perform at such a high level last night.
And he did it in every which way. Make 5 threes. He gets to the mid-range on the baseline. He's finishing at the rim, dunking lobs. And then on that block, it's barbecue chicken. He is having his way with smaller defenders. Ace Bailey looked every bit of a part of a top 5 draft pick. It was beautiful. The first half, 24 points, 9 of 10 from the field. For the game, 37 points on 20 shots. And out of the 20 shots, he took 1 bad one. But you look at him, they asked him after the game, when did you know that this would be your game? He said, after I banked in the 3. That was his first shot he took. That was his first make. So to have that type of confidence after making 1 shot is big time. But I look at the other guys. Ace Bailey was marvelous. He was big time. But he was also big time at Indiana when he scored 39 points. But he didn't have the help. Everyone else on the roster,
great point,
34% from the field. When you look at last night at Northwestern, Ace Bailey goes for 37. But his teammates, you think of Tyson Acuff, you think of Jermichael Davis, they all contributed. And you look at the others, 42 points on 52% from the field. Huge. Jermichael Davis off the bench, plus 19, 8 assists, 1 turnover. Somerville was on the glass big time. Tyson Acuff did exactly what Coach Pico brought him in to do, scored a ball. And then my guy Dylan Grant, another one of my guys, he took Nick Martinelli out of this ball game. Nick Martinelli is a big-time scorer, 16 points on 16 shots. That Pico defense really started to show out.
Martinelli wasn't the only Wildcat to struggle. They shot 42% from the field. And I know a lot of that does go into Rutgers defense. That's been their calling card and their DNA as of late. But Northwestern, Raphael, it just can't find a comfortable rhythm offensively. Yes, Martinelli most nights. Yes, Barnhizer most nights. Jalen Leach is thrown in. Ty Berry is thrown in. But there hasn't been enough consistency for this team to continue to make the run and try to get back to a 3rd straight NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I'm listening to Coach Collins after the game. It sounds like the guys aren't practicing. Like Brooks Barnhizer is banged up. He may miss a couple practices. So when you're not practicing with your full team, you don't get that continuity. I've been a guy, I've been hurt and not practiced throughout the week, but you throw me in the game on Saturday as a starter, it takes time to build that rhythm. But I look at Brooks Barnhizer, he's got to be better. Hurt or not, either you're playing or you're sitting down. He's taking too many jumpers at this part of the season. He's got to get into that middle of the lane and make some plays. But I look at Ty Berry and Matt Nicholson. They got to do their part. Ty Berry plays extremely well when he's knocking down shots, but when he's not guarding. And Matt Nicholson in 30 minutes, 5 rebounds is not good enough. The big fella has got to do his part. That's his class. Rebound the ball. 1 offensive rebound in 30 minutes. That's not going to get the job done for a 7-footer, 300 pounds.
Time for one final thought on Northwestern from Trent Meacham. Meach?
They look a little worn down right now. And here we are in the grind of the season. They got to pull it together. And what Raphael said, they got to get to the basket better. Barnhizer only 1 free throw last night. Give Rutgers credit, making them take tough 2s. But they got to do a better job of getting to the basket. Matt Nicholson's got to be a presence in there as a lob threat or offensive rebounder. Get to the basket, be more efficient on the offensive end.
All right, much more from these guys still to come. That's Wednesday in the books, but we'll look ahead to Thursday night. And we look ahead to Friday night as well. You know anything about that Indiana-Purdue game?
Just a little bit.
You playing 1 or 2 of those?
Oh, man, I got on red. Oh, this is crazy.
Oh, Raphael blocked from going back to West Lafayette after this show.
Didn't even think about it.
It's actually... Welcome back to Big Ten Today. Rick Pizzo, Trent Meacham, Raphael Davis. And during the break, we determined it's not crimson, it's not even red, it's burgundy.
It's burgundy, yeah.
So you're safe for now. At least that's our story, and we're sticking to it with Indiana and Purdue set for Friday night. We'll get Raphael's firsthand perspective in just a bit. But, Trent, you've watched this game as a fan, as an analyst for a long time. I know you head into this one, and Purdue, especially at Mackey, is a monster favorite. But in rivalry games, right, weird things always tend to happen, don't they?
They do. You can throw out the stats, you can throw out rankings, you can throw out records. That's just how it is. And what may be an opportunity for Indiana to get this right? They've lost 4 or 5. So now you're going on the road against your rival, against a team that probably it stings for Indiana because they're almost everything that Indiana wants to be. You know, the continuity that they have, the homegrown talent, the consistency, a point guard like Braden Smith that just runs the show, success year in, year out. So I think this is a prime time. It's going to be so difficult for them. They're going to have to match the intensity of Purdue's players. They're going to have to match the intensity of the crowd. But what an opportunity to correct this season, to get it moving on a new path. It's going to be tough, but I think it's a great opportunity for Indiana to get right.
Well, I think history proves nothing is a given. You look at your own history, 4-4, right?
Yep.
In 8 games against Indiana. And while you had some really good players on your team, you think about all the NBA draft picks that you played against, whether it was Zeller, Oladipo, Noah Vonleh, other guys on those teams, and yet you found a way to go 4-4. From the Purdue perspective, what does it mean to the Boilermakers, the program, to Matt Painter, to really everybody in that state that roots for Purdue and roots against Indiana this matchup on Friday night?
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I can feel it because it's the energy that you start to feel for this matchup. It's big time. And like Trent said, records go out the window because I played on the Purdue team in 2013, 2014. We finished dead last in the Big Ten, bottom of the bottom. But we beat Indiana, and the crowd went crazy. It erupted. You would have thought we were one of the better teams in the country. So this game is that big. It's so big to the magnitude of when we play this game. Coach Painter would have former guys call in and talk to us. You hear from Big Dog. You hear from Conzo Martin. You hear from the Three Amigos from the 80s because the game means so much. It was a point where I was a freshman at Purdue's campus. I had never even played in the game, but the season prior, so back to, I still blame Robbie Hummel. Robbie Hummel, E'Twaun Moore, Ryan Smith and those guys, they were swept in their senior year by Indiana. My very first day on campus at Purdue, we ran double suicides in 1:05 for those guys getting swept a year ago.
We're rolling grenades at Robbie Hummel. He's not even anywhere near the studio.
But that's how big it is. It matters. I can remember getting ran out of Mackey Arena. They blew the doors off of us with that Cody Zeller team. Victor Oladipo beat us by almost 40 points. Coach Painter was so upset after that game, so frustrated. We went on to win the next 3 straight. We took a loss at Indiana, and then Purdue went on to win the next 8 because this game matters in that locker room. It matters to the campus, and I'm just so happy that now you get Coach Painter, who played in the rivalry. You got Coach Woodson, who played in the rivalry. That's why it's back again. That's why it means something because now both teams understand what this means. And you look at a guy, Luke Goody. He's grown up wanting to play in this rivalry. Fletcher Lawyer, high school teammates, now rivals. It's just a big-time game.
You don't have to beat just Purdue when you play at Mackey. You have to beat that crowd as well. And I think a bad sign for Indiana is the fact that Purdue actually lost recently. It snapped a 26-game home win streak against Ohio State, snapped a 32-game win streak when Purdue was leading at home at halftime. To me, Raphael, Indiana would rather have come into this game without an angry Purdue team and without a crowd they had seen that loss to Ohio State.
Exactly. After that Ohio State loss, you saw on Twitter or social media, people were saying Mackey was dead. The energy wasn't there.
Oh, it won't be dead on Friday night.
You saw that Michigan game. Braden Smith gets one layup and it erupts. And the game, Indiana, I'll be there in attendance. I'll be there a few hours early. The lines will be lined up. Paint crew's going to sleep over. Team is going to bring them pizza. They are going to be ready for this game. There is to me, there's no bigger rivalry to Indiana and Purdue because of what it means to the fans, what it means to the state, what it means to people that don't even care about basketball. If you went to one of these schools, you care about this rivalry. I'm from a split household. I was a Purdue Boilermaker. Both of my older siblings, they were Hoosiers. So it was a point where my sister, I love her to death. She would wear her Indiana hoodie to the games.
I sense a butt coming.
Yeah, it's a butt. It's a butt. She was 9 months pregnant, big belly. We play at Purdue. She has on an Indiana hoodie because it just means that much to the rivalry. Relationships go out the window. My former middle school teammate, James Blackman, we didn't talk before the game. We didn't talk after the game. We didn't talk for a week before we played or after we played because this game means a lot to everybody.
See, that's when you give the baby a Purdue onesie, and there's nothing that she can do about it.
His father was an Indiana football player. He probably would have burned it up.
Maybe I take that back. Trent, the matchup clearly favors Purdue, but when you look at this Indiana roster, how talented it is, how deep it is, how dangerous it is. I know it's a bad sign that we're at the end of January and they're still trying to find that chemistry, but I would argue that if they do find that chemistry, their ceiling is still as high as just about any team in the league.
That's a big if, Rick, but I would agree with you. First, I do got to say I love hearing Raphael talk about this rivalry game. Just you can feel it, how much this means to him and these teams. Rick, for Indiana, here you're coming and you have a good opportunity, as I said earlier. You got to play inside out. That's where they may have an advantage. Balo's got the size on Renner first. Can you establish yourself on the inside? Can you out-rebound Purdue? Not easy things to do, but if they can take care of the ball, play inside out, and then those shooters find some rhythm, I think this could be a great game. Look, Purdue's going to be so difficult anywhere, and how they're playing now. They had a great response after that loss to Ohio State, just blowing out Michigan. But Indiana has the talent. They have the players. They're going to have to knock down some shots. But I want to see them get established on the inside with Balo, Renew, and Baco as well.
Yeah, I think absolutely you're right. Down low, that's where you have to take advantage. But out on the perimeter, I know that Braden Smith was the preseason player of the year. Yep. So he's going to get a lot of love, going to get a lot of attention throughout the course of the year. Trey Kaufman-Wren's been really good. He's been a huge part of this. But for Braden Smith to do what he's done, Raphael, this year, with the additional scoring load put on him, usually you ask a guy to be more of a scorer, to be more aggressive, then something has to fall off. It's his decision-making. It's his facilitating. It's the pace at which he plays. It's the amount of minutes he can play. None of that has fallen off at all for Braden Smith. All he's doing now is adding even more scoring to his repertoire.
Yeah, I talked to one of my former teammates who's now a coach at UIC. He was telling me he went to a Purdue practice and watched them. And he said, Braden Smith is not just I know Coach Diebler uses this. He said he's not an everyday guy, he's an every rep guy. He said Braden Smith was the hardest worker in that practice. Every single drill, Braden Smith is leading the charge. He's not going to get water break. He's communicating with his teammates because not just his scoring is up, he's balling, but his defense has increased. His defense is much better from a season ago. So he's taking on this leadership role. He's taking on this scoring role. He's taking on being the head of the snake on the defensive end. He has been outstanding, and he's accepted all of these expectations. And he's just been big time. That ball screen with Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren, that little short roll, it's almost unguardable. And I love Braden's confidence. He may have a bad game here against Ohio State, but you see at the very start of that Michigan game, he was up, he was ready for it, jumped that passing lane, got that steal, and got him off to the races. Braden Smith has been everything that we hoped for this season, everything that he thought he would be, and even more.
Indiana, Purdue, Friday night lights, inside Mackey, so good. Now there's times when we all could use a night off of Big Ten basketball. You used to have Mondays or Fridays off. This Friday night does not qualify. One of the most well-known initiatives of the National Association of Basketball Coaches is Suits and Sneakers Week, a wildly successful partnership with the American Cancer Society. And it's not just the coaches showing their support. We here at the Big Ten Network are doing our part as well. And we are thrilled now to be joined by Craig Robinson, Executive Director of the NABC. Craig, I know we're all very busy right now, but I know this is such an important initiative, and not just this week with Suits and Sneakers, but the entire battle against cancer for the NABC and Coaches versus Cancer. What's this week like for you with such a visible initiative out there for everyone to see?
Well, Rick, first of all, thanks for having us, and big fan of yours and happy to be here. And just want to let the folks out there know that the Coaches versus Cancer program, which is a nationwide collaboration between the American Cancer Society and the NABC, has been around since 1993. And back when I was coaching, I was a part of it. And over that period of time, we have collectively raised over $167 million for the American Cancer Society. And we share the same goal with the American Cancer Society, which is to end cancer as we know it for everyone. And there's no other sport that collectively unites behind a common charitable cause the way college basketball does. And this is the week that we've all been waiting for, where it's Suits and Sneakers Week, where it's the most visible time of the season for Coaches versus Cancer. And as you've seen, back in the day, we used to all wear sneakers with our suits, and now that everybody's casualed it up more, you're seeing a much more creative use of sneakers. And it's such an important initiative. This year, we're focused on cancer screening again. And we're just trying to get the message out that cancer screening is for anybody who's not showing symptoms, and screening tests can catch certain cancers early.
You know, Craig, that's a great point. Ohio State was on our air earlier this week. Jake Diebler wearing sneakers designed by kids fighting cancer at the local area hospitals in Columbus. But this is the visible arm of what is being done this week. But this is a 365, 24/7 job for you, for those of the American Cancer Society, for all the coaches that work with the NABC in this goal. So talk to me about the rest of the year and what the organizations are doing working together and what the coaches are doing tirelessly in their effort to try to eradicate cancer.
Yeah, well, Rick, in addition to this type of event, that as you said, and this is a focus of this week, year-round, our coaches are doing things in their own communities to raise awareness and to promote the life-saving work of the American Cancer Society. There are numerous different events that go on, from golf events to silent auctions to just regular sort of rubber chicken dinners where coaches do chalk talks and in the community. What you'll find is just about every month you could probably find someone doing something in their local communities. And I can't thank our coaches enough for being passionate to talk about this issue and use their platform to make people more aware of the need for the need for fighting cancer.
Craig, here in the Big Ten, Brad Underwood at Illinois was awarded the CVC Champion Award last spring. I know you worked together with Brad on the board. What has his involvement meant?
Well, you know, Brad has been tireless, and every step in Brad's career, he has been involved with Coaches versus Cancer. And more importantly, what Brad is doing for us, as you know, Rick, you know, our coaches, we're sort of getting older as coaches. Brad has been integral in recruiting younger, newer faces and voices to be a part of Coaches versus Cancer, and it has been invaluable, his experience and his influence.
Also inside the Big Ten, you know, we lived this personally a little bit with Fran McCaffrey, his son who played for him, battled cancer as a teen, and that became public because Patrick wanted to come out. He wanted to speak about a lot of the things that it led to in his life. How many more stories, Craig, are out there like that don't get the publicity, that don't get the attention that we also need to be aware of?
Well, Rick, there are numerous stories like that, and you know, I'm extremely close to Fran and Margaret McCaffrey. Fran and I played against each other in college, if you can believe that. We're that old, and he's got an offer in on my two youngest, so he's got first dibs on them. But Patrick is just such a wonderful young man to be open about his struggle and his situation. And there are hundreds of stories like that throughout the country where our coaches are taking an interest in locally in sort of helping lend their voice to getting the word out and getting the message out for people who like Patrick.
Craig, I know Fran's a terrific coach, but he was a baller back in his day, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, it's a funny story. We talk about this all the time. Fran wanted to go to Princeton, and Coach Carrill, back who was my coach, was recruiting him, and he thought he was going to go to Princeton until he got an offer from Wake Forest, and he ended up going to Wake Forest first before transferring to Penn. That's when he and I played against each other when he was at Penn, but he was a terrific ball player, tough, just like he is as a coach.
All right, Craig, let's finish here. I want to give you the last word. What else would you like to share with everybody listening who's watching Suits and Sneakers this week, who's seeing their favorite coach support this battle and try to raise more money in our quest to end cancer? The final word to Craig Robinson, Executive Director of the NABC.
Yeah, Rick, with 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women facing a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime, regular screening is more important than ever. Screening tests can catch certain cancers early, which they may be easier to treat. So we want people to get out, get screened. Don't be afraid of the don't not get screened because you're afraid of the answer. Get out there, get screened, and then let's keep working on this problem.
Great stuff, Craig. Really appreciate the time. Really appreciate everything that you and the NABC do, not just this week, but throughout the course of the entire year in our battle against cancer. Great to catch up.
Thanks, man. Great to see you, and thanks for having us.
Tripleheader Thursday inside the Big Ten. Penn State needs to get back to its winning ways. Ohio State trying to pick one up on the road against the Nittany Lions. Speaking of on the road, number 18 Illinois heading to a place that had been a house of horrors for Big Ten opposition, but Nebraska's suddenly struggling even at home. The Illini have won the last 9 meetings in that series, and a massive one out west for Oregon and UCLA. Bruins averaging more than 81 points per game during their current 4-game win streak. Get some thoughts on these games from Rayfel Davis and Trent Meacham. Let's start with Oregon, UCLA. I can see this, even though Oregon has been up and down offensively, I can see this, especially the way the UCLA has been playing as of late, an up and down game. Wouldn't be surprised if both these teams get in the 80s.
Yeah, I won't be surprised at all, because you look at Oregon, Jackson Shellstat has been playing big-time basketball these last 5-6 games. Last 5 games, Jackson Shellstat is 18 for 29 from the three-point line. That is 62% from deep. That is just big time. You look at Brandon Angel, he's playing some of his best basketball of the season as of late, averaging 17 points over the last 2 games. And I'm expecting a big-time game out of Nate Biddle. Nate Biddle needs to redeem himself. He went to Minnesota and left his game in Oregon. Had 0 points on the road at Minnesota. He's going to have to come in this game and be a factor. But I like what Jackson Shellstat has put together. He is the guard that we hoped he would be coming into this season. You can't win big if you don't have guard play.
Rayfel, it's hard to get from Eugene to anywhere. There's very few nonstop flights you got to go through. Denver, somewhere else, Salt Lake City maybe, even if you're trying to get to Minnesota. Trent, a thought on this one. UCLA has picked up some big-time wins, and they've done it, as Mick Cronin pointed out, with Tyler Bilodeau on the bench after suffering that ankle injury.
Yeah, for UCLA, it's one of those situations where you lose really your most consistent player, your best scorer, and it might be a net positive for them because now Adai Mara has had to step in. There's no choice. There's no choice about it. He's got to step in, averaging over 15 a game. He's blocking shots, almost 8 rebounds a game the past 3 games. So he's been thrust in there. He's using his 7-3 frame. He is so talented. He's so skilled. He can pass the ball. He finishes around the rim. He's a rim protector on the defensive end. So I think this will end up being a very good thing for UCLA. And then defensively, I think they're bought in. Everybody that plays, they're locked in on that end of the floor. Sebastian Mack has embraced the role of coming off the bench, and he's been a go-to guy. That's who they've given the ball to in the closing minutes. He hit that big shot against USC. He got to the free throw line against Wisconsin, just kind of isoing him. You know, they dropped 4 in a row, guys, and now they've won the last 4. That just shows this is such a long season. But they have it going now. I think this is going to set up for a great game here.
This is maybe the craziest season that any team has had. You're 2-0 in the Big Ten to start. You had those non-conference wins against Arizona, Gonzaga. And then you flame out in the start of Big Ten season. You lose 4 in a row, as Trent mentioned. Mick Cronin's throwing his team under the bus, then putting it in reverse and driving over him to boot. And then they respond by winning 4 in a row. If you can figure it out, you're smarter about basketball than I am. Illinois on the road at Nebraska. Trent, you know this program very well. You don't live very far from the campus in Champaign. What is this Illinois team right now as it heads on the road to try and beat the Huskers?
Well, it's a little bit different than UCLA, but now they're adjusting to how do we play without Tomislav Ivicic. You know, your 7-1 center, maybe the most important player for their team. In fact, they run so much through him on the offensive end, and he does so many things. He can pick and pop. He can play out of the short roll. He can score with his back to the basket. He can play make. He's not there. He's also a rim protector defensively. Now they're adjusting. They had no answers for Maryland. I thought the response against Northwestern was much better. Morez Johnson, I know Rayfel loves him. He stepped in as a freshman. He plays his role. He plays hard. He rebounds the ball. And also you have some other players step up. Yakachonis is, well, he's slowed down a little bit. Boswell hasn't shot the ball great. Humberkaus has shot the ball well. Jake Davis, Dre Gibbs, Longhorn off the bench. So they have a lot of firepower that hits you from different spots. We saw Will Riley explode against Michigan State. So many players, they're adjusting to time without Ivicic. And so we'll see how this team continues to evolve over the season. Nebraska hasn't been playing well. but that's been a tough place to play. So I think this will be a good game as well.
Diplomatically put that Nebraska has not been playing well. I think Fred Hoiberg would probably put it in more uncertain terms or more certain terms, perhaps. Tommy Ivicic, more important than Kasparas Jakachonis? You and I can have that discussion offline when we wrap up the show. Your thoughts on this matchup in Lincoln?
Trent's right. I do love Morez Johnson because even without Tomislav Ivicic down low, Morez Johnson gives you something. He gives you toughness. He gives you that junkyard dog mentality, finishing at the basket. I loved what he said after that game against Northwestern. It keeps it simple. I set good screens, I get the ball. And that's how you got to play as a freshman coming in the game when you're not in the normal role that you're used to. KJ's got to be big time on the road. You look at Kylan Boswell, he's got to be there. But I'm looking at this on the Nebraska side. I need my guy, another one of my guys, Bryce Williams.
You love Bryce Williams.
He's got to get back to his normal self. He's struggled the last 3-4 games, averaging 14 points a game, under 40% from the field. He's back at home. He's in front of the home crowd. I want to see him be aggressive early, get to the free throw line, get to the basket, and then let it get going from deep. Because without Bryce Williams going on offense, it's going to be tough for the Cornhuskers, not just to beat Illinois, but to beat anybody else to end this season. Juwan Gary got to get back on track. I want to see him drive the basketball, get in the lane. But I want to see a little bit better point guard play for the Cornhuskers. I think Aaron Eulis, Royster, you look at Sam Hoiberg, those three guys have got to be able to set the table for guys like Williams and Gary.
There's been a lot of conversation about what this team would be like had Rink Mass not been hurt, been able to play this year. I actually go to Keisei Tominaga more than I do Mass because so much was made of Keisei's three-point shooting and his showmanship. The dude just knew how to play basketball.
High IQ.
He could get to the hoop, high IQ, facilitated when the shot wasn't there. I would argue he's the piece that Nebraska is missing more than any other from the team that made the run to the NCAA tournament a year ago. Third and final game on Thursday, Ohio State, Penn State. Jake Diebler has his guys balling right now, and I think part of the reason, the elevation of play of Micah Parrish. You know what you're going to get from Bruce Thornton. I think you know what you're going to get most nights from Devin Royal. But you throw Parrish in there. Complementary pieces like Sean Stewart, Evan Mahaffey playing his role. I think Ohio State is playing the kind of basketball that Jake Diebler wants it to play.
Exactly. Then you put John Mobley Jr. back into his natural spot as a catch-and-shoot guy on the wing. Micah Parrish, his aggressiveness has been impressive the last 3 games. Since the Indiana loss at home, he has been on a tear, averaging 20 points a game, doing it every way. He's knocked down 5 threes at Purdue. He gets to the basket. He gets to the free throw line in the next game. He has been a big-time complimentary piece to Bruce Thornton, making Bruce's life so much easier on the offensive end. He's got to continue this type of aggression. Nick Kern is a pest defensively, so that matchup will be big time. But outside of the offensive end, it's been Ohio State's defense. You look at that Iowa game, Iowa's one of the best offensive teams in the United States of America. Ohio State holds them to 65 points, 39% from the field. They cut Josh Dick's water completely off. He's like he didn't pay his water bill or something. 0 points, 0 for 7 from the field. When they defend at that level, when they get production from Michael Parrish, you know what you get from Bruce, you know what you get from Royal. Sean Stewart's an ultimate athlete. If they put it together, this Ohio State team is going to be dangerous. They could spoil some seasons to end this year out, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, just in case this show expands in its airings, we should probably say one of the best offensive teams in the United States, Canada, and Greenland, just in case. Because you never know what might happen in the political landscape. Trent, I want to get some thoughts from you on Ohio State, Penn State. The good news for the Nittany Lions, they are back at home because this is a team that struggled on the road. They've been better in their home arena. And you look at how close they've been. Their last 4 losses by a combined 11 points.
Yeah, they've lost 6 of 7, but they have not played bad. This is not going to be an easy game. I think a spoiler, Penn State's going to spoil some teams here to close out the season. Again, they haven't played well or they haven't played bad. They have not finished games well, though. I look at that game against Michigan. I thought Nick Kern made a great drive and got fouled, but otherwise they didn't get stops when they needed to. The final possession felt like Ace Baldwin was just hunting a 3. And so their late game execution needs to be better. But this is a good ball club. That whole starting 5, they're all playing well. Baldwin hasn't been as efficient, but this is a talented team. They'll get after you defensively. I love the point guard matchup with Baldwin and Thornton. Two of the best in our league. I think those guys going at it, I would expect them to match up with each other as well. It's going to be a terrific matchup, and this won't be an easy game for Ohio State. Or really, I think anybody playing Penn State, this will be at the rec hall as well, if I'm not mistaken. Illinois got tripped up last year, and I think that'll be a great environment in this one as well.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest surprises for me. I thought Penn State was going to be a sleeper this year. I'm shocked to see them at 3-7 through 10 games. They've been close. In this league, close gets you absolutely nothing except another L in the standings and closer to missing out in the Big Ten tournament. Remember, got to be in the top 15 this year. For Rayfel Davis, Trent Meacham, and Emily Eman, I'm Rick Pizzo. Thanks for the hang here on this edition of Big Ten Today.